What is up, everybody? In today's video we are going to be doing a full engine teardown on my new to me K24 A2. All that in today's episode. My name is Ryan, this is Project Race Car, let's get into it. So if you guys have been watching, this is my new to me K24 A2 that I got for super cheap, but it has a big issue, and that is it's been through so much neglect and a ton of oil sludge in the engine. So we need to tear this all the way down to see if it is still a viable block. So in the actual engine head we have a lot of oil sludge buildup, and so what I want to do today is get this completely stripped down to its bare block and see how it is looking on the inside. So for an update on the E30, I figured out what the issue is and why it's running so rich, and I got it idling a lot better, but I will show you guys all that in the next video. But our main focus is getting this guy torn down today and getting this figured out. Thanks. I can tell. Where's my 10mm? Oh my goodness, I forgot a bolt. Okay. The intake ports actually don't look too bad. Let's keep going. So a lot of this engine just uses a bunch of 12 mils, and it's really funny starting to take apart different engines because they'll use mainly one type of bolt, and so half of this engine I'm guessing is just 10mm and 12mm. What's super nice about having two engines being the same in two different swaps is you get a steel parts. And so the other day I was trying to test the map sensor for the E30, and I realized that this engine had the exact same map sensor, so I didn't need to go buy a new one to try to test it. I could just swap parts really quickly and find a easy solution. Turns out it wasn't the map sensor that was broken. Okay, and the alternator comes off. Cool. AC compressor off. That should have been the last bolt. Oh, this has Honda Bond on it. This thing ain't coming off easy. There we go. Oh no. That's why we have to take everything apart, because the oil just is everywhere. The sludgy oil is everywhere. Well, I'm going to take this motor mount off, and then the entire intake side is done. Okay, so I just finished stripping the intake side, and I don't know if you guys can see, but my entire shirt is absolutely drenched. It is currently an index of 112 degrees here in Austin, and it is brutal. So rather than me dying of heat stroke, I'm going to call it good for today, and then I will come back well rested and get the exhaust side, and then we will pull the head. Look at those juicy 1-inch headers. Oh God. Nice. Nice. Don't rotate on me. Oh, nice. I just have to crack the crank bolt loose. And I did that by setting the engine on the ground, getting a breaker bar. Ugh. Ugh. You have to get this specialty tool to hold the crank in place and then put just so much force into it. I highly recommend doing this on the ground. I wasn't able to get much leverage when it was on the engine stand. Okay, we're gonna get it back up and then take off the front cover. Woo. Look how meaty that bolt is. Should just come right off. Awesome. And it's gonna have this little key in here that you have to make sure to pull off. And basically what that does is it keeps the crank from actually spinning. Oh, okay, that's one way to do it. Oops, hopefully that didn't dent anything. Look how everything is just glazed on here. You can tell that the oil's just been very hot and like cooked on. It's crazy. And there we go. And then we can remove it, the other 10mm. Now we also need to get this top guide tensioner off. Oh, we break that loose. That loose. And typically with any sort of K-series, it's worth it to just go ahead and replace the chain and replace all these timing parts. Since the chain tensioners are plastic and they go through a lot of heat cycles, it's good to just replace them when everything is out of the car. The chains typically stretch over time, so it's just worth the $100 or however much to replace it. So what's super interesting is obviously this motor was leaking a lot, but you can see just how brittle the Honda Bond is and just how much it's like actually cracking. And so the Honda Bond just after time just gets really hot and then starts cracking and then leaks. So the cam caps are actually numbered and labeled for the direction that they go. So that it has a 1 and an arrow facing towards the cams, and 2 and an arrow facing towards the cams. Now the cams are free to just lift off. Someone actually mentioned in the comments of taking this VTC gear apart and making sure that the inside is cleaned. So we will see again if there is another head that I can use on Facebook Marketplace for cheap. If not, we can also replace this with a 50-degree one. And if nothing else, we will take this apart and clean it. So the internet taught me this last trick, and that is to pop up all three of the rockers, grab a zip tie them together so that they stay together, right, and then put them back down. That way they are not all flopping everywhere. There are certain springs and dowel pins inside these guys that will fall out and fly out, so you want to keep it all together as a unit when you pull this cover off. So just lift all three of them up, pop a zip tie underneath, zip tie them together, and put them back down. Okay, and then with the smallest amount of force and just the lightest bit of prying, I'm just going to try to work both sides out, and it should come up as a full unit. Awesome. Okay, same thing with the cam bolts. We are just going to start in the middle, do a quarter turn. Okay, this should be everything. We should just be able to rock this maybe? Maybe I need a bit of a pry. There we go. Like that. Okay. Now we should be able to go. Ooh. Oh no. What was that? Oh, yikes. So here is the head and the underside, and right now I'm just kind of looking to make sure that there's no cracking in between any of the smaller points on the head. I don't know where some engines will fail at a certain point, and a specific point on most engines. So I'm just looking in all the smallest areas to make sure that the head wasn't overheated and that there's no cracking in between the valves or anything like that. We can check to make sure that everything is fully seated and not leaking at all, because obviously that wouldn't be great. But overall, so far so good. It looks okay, and like there's not a lot of like warping. In terms of the pistons, there's a lot of just like powdered debris, and this was all like this. And every single cylinder is like this. So what I want to do is add a bit of oil so that we can actually crank this thing over and see how the cylinder walls look. So far they don't look too bad, but you can never be too sure. Okay, now it's time to get this big old ugly oil pump out of the way, and it's just held on by 5 14 millimeters, so we are going to take those off. You can actually see like the heat and the wear, and I'm sure that this piece is just so brittle now from all the heat cycles in it, so it's always just a good idea to replace these parts. They do add up, but it's worth it to replace them and just get brand new parts. That way you just have it as a peace of mind. The E30 has already had all this stuff done to it, and turns out it's just two 14 millimeters and two 12 millimeters that's holding this giant thing on. So I'm sure most of you guys are aware, but this oil pump is actually the reason why K24s will grenade themselves. And from what I've heard is that there's these two giant spindles in here that pump up oil, right? But with these things spinning so fast at such high RPM is what ends up grenading it, because what it does is it adds air into the system. They spin too fast and don't pick up enough oil, and ends up putting air into the system, and then your car runs dry at higher RPM. At least that's what I've heard, but also your engine is trying to spin these two guys, and this is some heavy weight, and I just got oil all over the floor. So this is heavy. It makes just more sense to upgrade to the K20 oil pump, and you should always do that in a K24. Now I'm just gonna add a bit of oil into each cylinder. Oh god, that was far too much. But that way the cylinder walls will be lubricated, and then we will be able to crank this thing over without worrying about, that was so much oil. But now we will be able to lubricate the cylinder walls and actually crank this thing over without worrying about it making any more scarring. So aside from the pistons actually being dirty, the cylinder walls actually look really good, right? And so I think I could get away with not pulling the pistons out and just cleaning them. And I think I might do that. I might pull a couple of the caps just to make sure that those didn't get overheated, or make sure the bearings are good, because now would probably be the best time to redo that. But sometimes if something isn't broken, you shouldn't mess with it. In terms of the head, this thing needs a very good cleaning. Like I said, I might look for a new one, and if there is a already cheap and fully assembled one, then I might go with that one, because trying to clean this is going to be a little bit rough. In terms of everything else, a lot of the parts when you do a K-series like this, you don't actually reuse. So all of the timing components you should upgrade and just buy new. The cams you'll use, and the all of the rockers and the cam holders, but that's just part of the head. You are going to replace the oil pump, so you will get rid of that. And then I'm going to do head gaskets, and most likely going to do ARP head studs. So doing ARP head studs would be a worth it investment. What I've thought about doing is building this one for boost, swapping it into the E30, and then swapping this engine into the Honda. I think that would be a sick move. In terms of the E30, I actually figured out the issue, but you guys are gonna have to stay tuned until next video, and I will show you how good it is running and idling. I am super excited about it. We made huge progress. But for the progress that we made today and actually pulling everything apart, it's all very self-explanatory, and these K-series engines are a super good, easy platform to learn on. It's a very simple 4-cylinder, and they just work. I'm actually really surprised about how clean the bottom end of this thing is when you look at the actual top end. So actually looking into the bottom end of this thing, we can see that it actually looks pretty clean, and there's not a lot Obviously there is still some of this like deep embedded stuff on, but if we actually like look down in there, it's not that way all throughout the engine, which is good. So since this looks pretty decent, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of research and see how much of a pain pulling this cradle will be, and if I should do it or not, because I might just do it and reseal it just for a peace of mind in the future. But overall, this thing looks pretty good. So make sure you guys stay tuned to see the progress on the E30 as well as the progress on this engine. We got a lot done in today's video. And if you guys could leave a like, it would help me out a ton. And until next time, my name is Ryan. This is Project Race Car. Have an amazing day. Peace.